comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, and it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change.
I conducted the following video of Waldo, who immigrated from Cuba at the age of 8 years old.
Waldo, when you came as an immigrant with your parents and your brother at the age of 8 from Cuba, did you experience any prejudice, you directly or your family? And if you're willing to share, what was that experience?
Well, if you want to speak about or talk about prejudice, I first experienced prejudice while in Cuba as a 7-year-old boy. Back at that time, after the revolution, it was pretty difficult and scary. Somehow, people around the neighborhood found out that we were leaving the country, and so they had a certain attitude or prejudice towards us. And so what happened was, one day I went out to play, and the other kids saw me, and I said, "Can I play ball?" They're playing stickball. And they essentially started screaming at me, calling me a worm and a traitor and a whole bunch of things, and I didn't quite understand what was going on. Then they started throwing rocks at me and going to come after me with sticks. So I became panicky, and I turned around and ran as fast as I could to my house and went inside the house and locked the door behind me and told my mother about it. So the first prejudice that I've ever experienced that I can remember as a child was political prejudice, because those who were with the revolution, the communists, were not happy that other of us that were not were actually leaving, or in that sense betraying them. Then after I came to the United States, we settled in Newark, New Jersey. We essentially had some difficulty finding a place to live, because at that time in 1964, nobody really wanted to rent to immigrants, and then immigrants with children. So it was a little difficult to find an apartment for us. But finally we found one. And then, as I started going outside to play, I had a little toy gun, which I used to shoot imaginary enemies and play games that kids play. So suddenly I'm downstairs in front of the apartment building, and there's the other 3 children about, I don't know, 10, 15 feet away. And all of a sudden they began yelling at me, saying, "Hey, that's my gun." And I looked at them. I wasn't sure what they were saying, but I could see their body language. And saying, "That's my gun, it's mine." And I said, "No, mine, mine." So they began to argue with me. As I moved away from them, one came up around behind me with a big rock. So just as about lift the rock to hit me in the back of the head, my mother had come downstairs and looked at it and screamed at them. He dropped the rock and he left. And so I realized what was going on, and I moved away, went towards my mother, we went upstairs. So at that point, I realized I had to watch the kids, not just in Cuba, but I had to watch the kids over here. And so they were trying to take advantage of me because I was a young kid, closer to their age, but I was an immigrant. I didn't know the language, and I wasn't totally familiar with the customs. But I realized I had to defend myself. So the other type of prejudice I experienced wasn't so much, I don't know about prejudice, but somebody wanted to take advantage of me. So because I was a foreigner. Most likely they would not have done that to someone that was like them. As far as prejudice in other areas, it's hard to say, because as I grew up, I was very fortunate, quickly learned the language, and was able to assimilate very quickly as a child. And most immigrant children learn the language very quickly. So they don't experience that kind of prejudice unless there's issues between children, and the type of prejudice might exist because you don't like someone else, or they're different than you, and that kind of thing. But that are my most vivid recollections of experiencing prejudice as a child. As an adult, from time to time you run into people that you know don't like you, because of your language, your heritage, or some other reason. But there's also political prejudice, there's racial prejudice, there's prejudice by class, there's prejudice of different types. And there's people that just don't like others different than them, or they're very weary. You have to kind of win them over and overcome that prejudice, let them know that you're human too. So that is my little bit on prejudice this afternoon, and I hope that was helpful. Do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's it.
It's me. Thank you.
All right.
We are the world. We are the world. We are the children. Yes, sir. We are the ones that make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true. We make a better day. Just you and me. Woo! Good God.
Questions? Okay. Do you know what prejudice means?
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of being kind of biased, judgmental in a way.
Okay. Do you feel discriminated because you're black? Oh my god.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Do you get angry because people assume you're automatically Dominican or just American?
Not angry, but frustrated. Mainly because people are they're very judgmental. So when they actually look at you, they don't really assume. I don't know how to put it in a way. They just assume you're one thing and not the other. Because I've gotten, no, like she doesn't understand Spanish. Ella nada más negra. Or, oh no, she's Dominican. And I'm like, okay, why do you think I'm Dominican? Or why do you think I don't know Spanish? Or when they actually do say those things, I just correct them and I tell them, yes, I understand what you're saying. Then you know I'm not stupid. They're just being judgmental just because I look or act a certain way.
Okay. Do you think there's still racism out there?
Yeah. Really? Hell yeah, I do. Oh. But I think it's more now, not just towards like my race only, because if you think about it, there's been many not incidents, but many like news reports about shootings, about cops being racist towards blacks, or saying things like it's ridiculous things like that, saying that it's all about race. But I think there is a lot of racism now, but you just need to, I don't know, I just think there's just a lot of racism now. You just have to look at it from your different point of view or whatever.
Do you think the U.S. majority have prejudice against blacks?
I think the United States majority are racist towards mostly in any race besides white. That's just me. Because you could be Hispanic, you could be black, you could be Muslim, you could be God knows what, and they'll say God knows what about you. And not even that, you could be white too, and they'll be like, oh, esos gringos. Because the Hispanics do it all the time. So I believe wherever you go, there's gonna be something said about you.
Do you have any?
Hi, Daniel. I want to ask you some questions.
Okay.
The first question is, had you ever experienced prejudice?
Yes.
When?
I experienced prejudice back as early as elementary school, going to a school that was very mixed race with whites, blacks, Latinos, and kids from all over different backgrounds. However, being usually one of the smaller kids in the class and being very white myself, uh, I experienced prejudice in the form of being bullied, being pushed around by other non-white kids. I've been pushed into bushes. I've been pushed on the ground and had money taken from me. Uh, I've been hit just on the sole fact that I was a small white kid. Uh, I've experienced as late as high school, just walking into the wrong part of the parking lot on the way back from lunch, and a group of non-white kids from the high school pushed me into the bushes and took money from me because I was a lot smaller back then. Uh, what I could just recommend uh, from to my experience from this is don't let it bring you down. Don't let it form prejudice form into racism because you don't want it to go down that path. You know, kids are kids, and people don't know why they do things the way they do most of the time when it comes to being prejudiced because uh, prejudice isn't something that is you're not born prejudiced. You're taught that through the home, through family, and and whoever you hang out with. Um, so no matter what, I have friends from all different backgrounds: black, white, Cuban, Colombian, Peruvian. My girlfriend is Cuban herself, and no matter what, everybody's different. So